in the middle. Mezzanine level financing is that middle layer, and that's very important for financing LBO transactions. You'll see shortly. So this is going to be sort of like a standard hierarchy, if you will. So mezzanine includes everything, like I said, in this middle layer, and this is senior debt up here. So common stock, again, is sort of the shares of a company. The shares of a company. So what you trade on a stock exchange or anything like that. Preferred stock, for the most part, is going to be similar to common stock, but it's going to have certain specific privileges tied to it. So preferred stock, for instance, common stock is the kind of situation where a company declares a dividend or they don't, right? Preferred stock may have a mandatory dividend. It may be a mandatory dividend of 10%, or something like that. So it is equity, but it's going to be something that has specific, sort of specific privileges tied to it. The next layer, or potential layer, would be convertible debt. And so what that is basically debt that at some point can be converted into equity, right? So in the meantime, you'll have interest associated with it, some interest rate, but it's possibly converted into equity. And then you're going to have what's called subordinated debt. Subordinated debt we'll come back to because it gets its name from being subordinated to senior debt. So senior debt is listed as senior because if the company goes bankrupt, they get paid first, right? So the senior lender is always going to get paid first. So after the senior lender, the subordinated debt holder gets paid, and then on down the line, right? And if there's anything left at the end of the day, the common stock shareholders, get it. So, if we were applying it to everyday terms, the senior debt would be like, the debt on your house, right? So, it's something that's secured by something, by a physical asset, right? Or the debt on your car. There's a physical asset there that somebody can come and get if things go wrong, right? So you're going to pay 6-7%, in that range. For everyday people, a relatively low rate. Subordinated debt is based on cash flow, which is like credit card debt, sort of, for normal people, right? It's the kind of thing where, like, if you don't pay your credit card off, nothing really happens. They don't come to your house and get anything, right? They just chalk it up. Much, they'll damage your credit, but they're not going to come to your house and acquire anything. If you don't pay for your house, people are going to come and move you out of it, So subordinated debt is based on cash flow, just like credit card debt is based on our cash flow, our income from our jobs, and we pay it. But as a result, the rates are higher as you get down to, the food chain. So just like a credit card debt could be 17% APR, you're never going to pay that on a car, right? That would be almost criminal. It's that high rate because it's more risky because there's no assets backing it. And so that's the similar relationship between senior and subordinated debt. Okay. So again, in terms of the sources, our senior debt is usually. Can you guys see this, by the way? Okay, and you have it there close, right? Okay, good. The senior debt is going to be usually, just banks. So banks that we all know. Wachovia will make these loans. Citibank, anybody, J.P. Morgan, they'll make these loans. So it's not, is not incredibly risky types of debt. It's usually going to be secured by the cash on a company's books, the accounts receivables, the property, plant, and equipment, the inventories, if a company is a company that has inventories. It's going to be secured by all those things. And they're going to loan according to specific percentages that they feel they can get out. So for instance, they're not going to say, if you have $5 million in accounts receivables, they're not going to give you $5 million against that. What they're going to do is they're going to give you, about $4 million against that, right? Because what they're expecting is that in the process of trying to collect them, someone will be bad, and there may be some hassle or some time there, so they're going to assume that not everything will be collected. Same thing with stuff like inventories. Inventories will usually only be loaned at 50% against a given set of inventories, and that's just because the bank is not in your business, so they're going to have to try to sell stuff that they really know not that much about. So if I lend to a software company, and all of a sudden they go bankrupt and I have to try to sell their software, I don't know anything about software. So I'm probably going to have to, even if it's worth $10 billion, I'm going to probably have to almost give it away to somebody for $5 billion because I don't know really what it's worth, and they're going to tell me it's not worth anything. They're going to tell me they're giving me a deal at $5 billion. So that's just how it works in practice, so that's typically how much will be advanced against these things. Property, plant, and equipment will usually be about 25%. Because again, you're dealing with something that's even more complicated. So now I'm dealing with a machine that's specifically built to do airplane maintenance, repair, and overhaul. Who knows anything about that? How many potential buyers are there out there? And so I'm only going to advance you 25% of the value of that thing. So, in any case, so the senior debt is usually going to be bank debt, making those kind of decisions that are just standard, not easy, but pretty standardized decisions, and so, they're kind of top of the food chain. So he's going to be venture capitalists and LBO funds, and a lot of times they'll make investments that have bonds attached, but usually this can be as much as 80% of the total deal in an LBO. And then mezzanine is going to be sort of third parties that are out there putting in that middle layer of financing, and sometimes they will get some equity as well, usually in the form of like what's called warrants. And warrants are just sort of like options that, if a company grows to a certain point, or if they hold them for a certain time, then they'll get some equity. But really, they just want that high interest. That's how they make most of their money. Okay. So just to get into a little more detail, the capital structure. Senior debt is typically going to be as much as, and these are the types of things, like these numbers are not hard and fast, right? But they are typical. So if we were to evaluate the last 50, LBO deals that went off, then we would find that these ratios would be generally true, on average, right? So I'm saying this from the same point that the value to you is that, you'll know not to throw around numbers in interviews or in situations that are too far off of this because this is standard, So that's the point of this kind of stuff, is to give you tools that,